host for the program Coming Home.
We began by meeting at a hotel in the ballroom, and from there we came upon a property that we are currently at today.
And I get on them all the time. We have to change our thinking if we're ever going to walk in the kingdom of God.
Well, hello and welcome to our program Coming Home, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today. And if you're a regular viewer, I especially want to thank you for being faithful to watch our program every week, and hope that it has been an encouragement to you. And if you happen to be watching the Coming Home program for the very first time, I ask you to just sit back and enjoy what you're about to see and hear today. And we desire, it is God's desire through us to bless you today. So I'm pleased today to have a returning guest on the program. Her name is Dawn Michael. Now, Dawn has various talents and giftings. She is our youth leader at church, along with Rose and a couple of our men. And she is also by profession a family counselor, and she works with Family Solutions 3, is it?
Yes.
3.
Yes.
Welcome, Dawn.
Yes, thank you, Pastor.
It's
Thank you.
good. I didn't realize it's been a long time since you've been on the program. I want to say it was back last August, maybe even. And at that time, we talked a lot about the problems that are facing families and facing youth and children today. And in your profession as a family counselor, you deal with all kinds of issues. And you know, I think that many people, that parents, for example, that are having problems with their behavioral issues, for example, with their children, they probably think they're the only ones, but that's not true, is it?
Absolutely, Pastor. There's a lot of families out there that need just that village to come alongside them and to support them and encourage them and to give them hope and support. And
I know, Dawn, you've got some things to share about what some of those issues are that I call them issues that our children are dealing with and the parents are dealing with their children. And maybe you could talk about what some of those are, and maybe the viewers can say, "Oh, I know, I know someone who has that problem. I have a grandchild that has that problem, or I have a son or daughter that has that problem." And so, what are some of the issues that children are battling with today?
Some of the issues our children are facing, Pastor, deal with just needing a role model, someone that believes in them, and someone that can come in and just be a support to the family, and someone that just can come alongside the family and offer strength-based advice and positive reinforcement for the family, because our parents feel so stressed out and overwhelmed, and so it's just someone to come alongside them and say, "This is what I see that you're doing right. Let's continue to build on this." Because no one wants to be told you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, this wrong. And so if you come in and say, "Hey, you're doing this right. Let's build more on this," families are so much more receptive to that approach.
Yes. So in many ways, you're like a coach.
Yeah.
And you're there to encourage and empower people and give them hope, right?
Absolutely, yes, Pastor.
What an incredible privilege that is, to make a difference in people's lives. What a calling. And it is a calling. It's a ministry, because not everybody could do this, but God's given you the unique talents and giftings and abilities and the grace to do it, and even an enjoyment in doing it.
Oh, absolutely, Pastor.
I mean, I know you. I work with you, see every week, and I hear you talk about some of the situations you're going through and how it pulls on your own heart. Would you say that's one of the hardest things about it is because of love? You love these kids and these families so much that it's really hard to go home at night and not think about them?
Right, Pastor. And God has given me such a passion and a desire for the younger generation, whether that's in ministry, whether that's in counseling. I have a heart for the younger generation, and it's such a desire of my heart to see this generation rise up and become incredible leaders in the political field and in ministry and just world changers. And so whether I'm doing that in the ministry part of my life or in the counseling field, I put my whole heart into it, because I have such a desire for the younger generation to see them rise above circumstances that they're currently in. So that does pull on me, but through prayer and my church family, I'm able to stay filled with the Spirit and go out and continue to pour out into the lives of the younger generation.
Yes, and I do want to mention that Dawn is by profession, is a family counselor. She went to school for this and is very knowledgeable in what she's doing. And I'll mention this probably 2 or 3 times throughout the interview, but Dawn's services are available if you have a child, a grandchild, or you know of a child in your church, or if you're a pastor and you happen to be watching this. And I would say this to all pastors, as I'm one myself, so I know and realize I do not have time to meet everybody's needs. And I'm thankful for people like Dawn that we as pastors can call up, and through your agency, Dawn, there are resources available. Many families would think, well, I know my child needs help, but we don't have the money, we can't afford it, I don't know if the insurance will pay for it, or we don't have insurance. And so just you want to touch a little bit about what your agency can do to help people that are in need of help.
Absolutely. Family Solutions 3 is an in-home service, so I actually go to the home, Pastor, and I serve my families in their own home setting, which is a complete blessing because I get to give them real solutions to the issues that they're dealing with and facing, because sometimes in the professional clinical setting we might not get the whole aspect of what's going on, but when you're right there in the home setting and you're seeing how things are playing out, you're really able to give more relatable suggestions and offer that strength-based approach. So yeah, we do in-home services. I meet with my families once or twice a week, depending on what the need is. And all of our services are covered through Medicaid or Title 19. So there's no out-of-pocket expense for our families.
Yes. And what are some of the specific, I remember from before we talked about, for example, children that have anger issues.
Yes.
And I find that there's a lot of children angry today for a variety of reasons, and I don't want to go into what those are, but they're dealing with anger and frustration, the peer pressure at school, the pressure at home, peer pressure, and as you know, any one of us can only take just so much and then we blow, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that a lot of children are under a lot of pressure and stress that we don't realize, and so all parents see on the surface is their anger. I have a 15-year-old grandson, so I understand. I'll ask him to do something and I get this backlash and I'm going, whoa, what's going on? Well, there's a lot going on, isn't there?
There is, Pastor.
And so parents are dealing with children that seem to be angry and disobedient, frustrated. There's usually a deeper reason for that.
Absolutely. And with our services, I can usually work with my families up to 1.5 years. And so that gives me the time frame to really get to the root of those issues, because when we first meet with the family, we do an assessment. We find out what's going on in the family that they're struggling with, that we develop a treatment plan. So then I have a plan, some goals to go in there and say, we're going to hit on this target symptom and this target symptom and this target symptom. So we look at the target symptoms, but then we go deeper into the root of what's really going on, so that at the end of the 1.5 years of our services, some of my families only need me for 1 year. So just depending on what the need is or what the root is, we can really get in there and not only get it solved, but then put tools and resources in the hands of the families, so that after services end, they can still succeed and move on with life, whatever's going on.
That is, I mean, just the encouragement that gives to parents that don't know what to do. And I talk to parents myself every once in a while that with their children, they just don't know what to do. They feel like they've tried everything. And you know, sometimes our children, especially our teenagers, cannot receive from us as parents. It takes an outsider.
Sometimes
and that's where Dawn comes in. It takes an outsider to sit down with them, be able to listen to them without reacting, and be able to listen to them and to speak freely without any bias, because most children think, or teenagers think, their parents are biased. But anyway, one of the issues I know is facing children and teenagers today, even adults, is the attention deficit or the hypertension disorders. And a lot. I understand there's a great increase of this, and they're putting children on medication for these things. And you know, there's a reason why children are acting out this way. Would you say that?
Right, Pastor. Yep. I believe that it's both a natural thing and also an environmental. Yeah, I do believe that both of those plays into our children with some of the attention deficit disorders, but with behavior modification, skill building, encouragement, setting a routine or a schedule in place, that can eliminate a lot of those target symptoms, what I spoke about earlier. And so sometimes parents feel a little concerned about placing their children on medicine, and so taking a more of a natural approach with the skill building and doing what we can in the home to alleviate some of those target symptoms and bringing peace to the household and just allowing the family to feel more empowered. There you go. Isn't that, I mean, just think about that for a moment, because as I said, most parents that have children that they're having issues with, they're frustrated. They feel powerless. And what you do is by helping them, giving them strategies and plans and following through and being a coach on the side, you empower them. You give them hope that this can be different, that it can be changed. And by the way, you also do counseling with adults as well. It's not just children or teens. And adults that are having that have social issues or need help with problem solving or depression. Would you say there's a rise of depression today? I would absolutely say there is, Pastor. And what I found with depression is that depression is anger, and it's anger directed inward. We can either release that anger outward, and that can come out with some of those target symptoms and with aggression, verbal aggression, but depression can be an inward anger going on that's brewing. And so just having someone listen wholeheartedly to what is going on, sometimes it just naturally falls into place when you know that you have someone that you're connected to, you can trust, and really express what you're feeling and what's going on inside. There's just a natural process that occurs, Pastor. And then you also add the piece of having someone really listen to you, and you know, that trust and security that helps build that healing process and releasing the anger.
Now, I know you brought some notes with you, and
I
there were some specific things you wanted to, so I'm going to just turn you loose for a little bit to talk about those things that you have on your list.
Okay,
and you look right into the camera and do that, and talk to the people.
What I really find, Pastor, is that there's 5 things that our children really, really need, and that is affirmation, identity, purpose, security, and unconditional love. And most of that happens just with our parents and our adults just spending time, taking the time to relate, to communicate to the children. And that happens when you get home from school. Just sit down and communicate and ask your child, how is your day? Just take that couple minutes just to sit down and listen to them, and just be prepared to listen, not to always jump in to offer, well, you could have done this or you should have done this, but allowing them to process their own day. And then also I encourage parents to kind of have some reflective questions, like, well, if you were to do it again, what do you think you would have done differently? Or if when this happens again, how do you think the outcome could be? Just to put it back into the ball back into the children's lap, where they're using their own skills and problem solving and reasoning skills, and kind of coming up with their own ideas, so they own it. And I really find that when the children own it, they're more apt to stay committed and motivated to stay on that.
That's important, isn't it? Even with adults, I find that's working with adults, because I tell people the answer is within you. And so, you know, the counseling is probably 80% listening. And even parenting is probably 80% listening, and then 20%. And I like to use questions like you said. If this happened already, and you say to them, well, now that you reflect on that, how could you maybe have done it differently? Because
Right.
that's training.
It is, yes. I love that word. I love that word. Another thing I think is just to offer one positive remark. Not to be critical or judgmental, because I think our children are under so much pressure. And if we can just offer that one statement of affirmation, that
Yes.
one positive, strength-based approach statement, that's their medicine for the day.
Yes, that is for sure. And you mentioned the 5 things that all children need. The unconditional love.
Yeah.
I think that we as parents, I remember raising my kids, if they did something that didn't please me, or they didn't do what I asked them to do, it's amazing how we have a tendency to stop loving temporarily, stop loving our children, or maybe somebody else for that matter. We withhold love quietly. You know, we're not aggressive. It's Cold War, I call it. We're getting even with them because they didn't do their chores by withholding love. But they need unconditional love. That means that in spite of their mistakes, that we love them the same, and tell them we love them, and give them hugs, and spend time with them. And you know, while I'm on that, I want to say that children get their sense of value
Yes.
and importance by how much parents enjoy them.
Yes.
You know, playing with them.
Absolutely.
When the parents are playing with the children and the parents are laughing and enjoying their children, that is what reaffirms children.
Yes, that's so good,
And
Pastor.
affirmation is enjoyment of them, and it is praising them.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the clinical fields, we have a word for that, Pastor, and it's called affectionate play. And that's when you just completely sit down with your child, the parent becomes childlike, but yet that little bit step above the child, but they're relating to their child, and they cut loose and they're just having fun and giggling and really coming down to their child level, because that brings security. That brings security. And also that identity, because 80% of our identity, Pastor, comes from our fathers.
Oh, yes.
And so it's so important for fathers to be engaged and involved in their children's life, all phases of their children's development.
You know, I just heard this, I think Sunday, and I'm not sure which one of the ladies shared this, but they said, now I know which one it was, but she said that she tried to raise her children by the way that she was raised.
Yes. Yeah.
It was Mother's Day. And isn't that what we all do as parents? We only know what we've been shown, or what's been demonstrated to us. There's a lot of good resources and books out there, isn't there, on parenting and fathering especially. Because I find men are so busy. And I remember when I was raising my precious children that I was very busy. I left most of the child rearing up to my wife. But when you said that children, especially sons, but daughters too, get their identity from their fathers.
Yeah.
And that's us telling them who they are
Yes, absolutely.
in a very positive way.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, Dawn, we're about 2/3 of the way through this recording time, and I know you want to talk about youth ministry. Was there anything else you wanted to say about what you had in your list as far as the needs of children?
I just encourage mothers and fathers to work together, to be unified in their parenting. When there's division between mom and dad, that hurts the children. It does. And so the children are only as strong as mom and dad or the parents. And I understand that there's a lot of single mothers out there, and I honor the single mothers, Pastor, and the single fathers, because they're doing 2 full-time jobs.
That's right.
Plus. And so it is a very, very difficult position to be in, but I just encourage you to please allow other people in services and resources to come alongside you and be that village to help support you and hold you up. And there are resources and agencies and people out there willing to do that.
Yeah. And I know that, Dawn, if you have a child or a grandchild, or there's someone in your church, maybe you're a pastor or a youth minister or Sunday school teacher, and you have children that you know that are going through things, Dawn's contact information is on the screen. And I know Dawn would not mind if you just called to ask a few questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
call, make the call, and ask a few questions of Dawn, and she can help guide you and direct you and give you some input as to what you might be able to do. We're not, it's not like we're without hope.
Right.
There is
right.
a hope.
Absolutely.
So, youth ministry, Dawn,
Yes.
you and Rose and Troy and sometimes Jeff are working with youth, and you said earlier that young people, children and youth was your heartbeat.
Oh, it sure is, Pastor. It puts a stir in my spirit and a fire in my heart. I absolutely love it. Yeah.
Yep. So, what did you have to share about as a youth pastor? What counsel would you give either to parents or other youth leaders or children's Sunday school teachers?
Oh, I would just encourage you to stay in contact with your youth throughout the week.
Yes.
Text them, encourage them, send them Facebook comments. You know, I stay in touch with my youth throughout the week. I'm always posting things on their Facebook wall, and
Yep.
we need that extra encouragement, because I know how much encouragement I need to get myself up.
Yes.
And I know that if I know how much I need, and I know how much more our youth need.
Yes.
And so for them just to know that they're not alone, people are along their side, people believe in them, and people are reinforcing their identity in Christ, who
Yes.
Christ created them to be, recognizing their gifts and saying, you know what, you are such a man or woman of God, and God's got this incredible calling on your life, and I see God doing this, and I see you going to this place and doing
Wow.
this, and it's just releasing those prophetic words, releasing destiny, words of destiny, over them. You just see it in their eyes come alive, and they receive that, they take that, and they're off.
I remember, Dawn, about 4 months ago, I sat in on one of your youth classes, and Dawn had spent some time really seeking God and praying for each one of her youth, and God had literally shown her things, revealed things to Dawn about each one of them. And in that meeting that Wednesday night, one by one, you said to them, and you spoke to them.
Yes.
You spoke destiny to them. What God see, we don't see ourselves the way God sees us.
Right.
And so as a youth leader, a Sunday school teacher, whatever, what a great commission and a
Absolutely.
responsibility you have to speak what God sees in them, to speak it into them.
Yes.
That was an incredible service. I thought, oh wow, Dawn, you flowed, for you went from person to person to person, and each one of you had such an exhortive word for. And I watched their faces, and it touched them so deeply to think that God was thinking about them.
Yes.
That God was that they were on God's mind.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
that He had something to say about them, and that it was all good.
Yes.
God's not mad. I got to get that
Yeah.
out there.
Right, and God's not dead, and God has that purpose, and that goes back to another piece of the pie with the children need purpose. And when we speak those words of
Yes.
purpose, God needs you to go forth and do this. God has placed gifts and talents in you to go forth and do this. It's so incredible to see that, because they expect that.
Yes.
Last week, Pastor, I did not have a prophetic word for the youth, and they called me out on it. They said, "Where's our word?" And so they expect it. They want that, and just to see them being awakened,
Yes.
Pastor, with what they feel God's calling them to pray for
Yes.
this generation. And the season that we're in right now with our youth is they're being so awakened. The eyes of their heart are being so awakened
Yes.
with the stirring of what God, they're seeking, and they're feeling God's heart for their
Yes.
own generation. And they're really laying their lives down in the inner room of prayer and seeking God in
Yes.
that private, intimate sanctuary, and knowing God needs me
Yes.
to pray for my generation, and I'm going to be willing to answer that call.
Amen. Prayer is a big part of ministry, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And you know, on Wednesdays I see these youth come in, and they come in, some of them just beat up almost from the stress of schoolwork and whatever may be happening at home, and peer pressure and expectations and temptations that youth face. And I see them come in on Wednesday nights, and oftentimes many of them, if not most of them, just dragging
Yeah.
and needing to be picked up. And then after church is over, I see them again, and they're bubbling.
That's right.
And you
That's
and Rose
right.
and Troy do such a tremendous job with them. on Wednesday nights. And I'm
Yes.
so, as pastors, we're so thankful for our Sunday school teachers
Yes.
and our youth workers, because they're doing something we couldn't possibly do. So anyway, Dawn, so youth is your vision, and I want to say this because some people may not understand when you say prophetic word. You know, the Bible says that, or Jesus said, we're not to live on bread alone, but by every word that proceeds,
Amen.
not proceeded 2,000 years ago, although I am so thankful, let me make this clear,
Yes.
very clear. The written word of God is the foundation
Yes.
for our faith, but God is speaking today.
Yes.
And He's speaking to our hearts, and sometimes because our life is so muddled, we really need someone else to get into their prayer closet alone with God, and to really let God deposit that message in their heart for one of these youth,
Yes.
and come to them and say, do you know, I was praying for you and God just showed me this about you. God said this to me about you, and it just so helps them.
Absolutely, Pastor. Absolutely.
So what's your vision for your youth ministry, Dawn? We have a couple of minutes left.
Yeah. Gosh, I see our youth. I just foresee our youth really going to the community, really branching out of the church, branching out of the four walls, and doing mission work. And I know we have a lot of our youth that have mission callings.
Yes.
And so they have such a desire to go and help and serve. And I think that's the most important thing about our youth, Pastor, is that they have such a heart to serve.
Yes.
And they can be so used in so many ways
Yes.
in life, both in ministry and in places of leadership,
Yes.
because a great leader is one that also has a heart to serve.
To serve,
Yeah.
you bet. And you know, it's the feeling of being significant.
Absolutely.
I think there is something in every human being that wants to know this. Am I significant? Am I important? And does God even know that I exist? You know, God has an incredible calling and plan for every one of His children.
Absolutely.
And it is our goal, our quest is to find out who God is and what not only, well, before I say what He created us to do, who He created us to be. Because it's
Amen.
more about being,
Yes,
isn't it, Dawn? It's
yes,
more about being
yes.
a child of God than it is about doing. And it's out of that relationship we have with God, that being His child, that ministry happens.
Absolutely.
And it just happens as a natural spiritual flow. But anyway, Dawn, it's been so good to have you back on the program.
you,
I'm sorry it took
Pastor.
so long to have you back in again. But we'll do this more often, because I think your
Absolutely.
message and your ministry is vital today because of the need that there is in families and in young people and in our children.
Yes.
And so there you go. This is Dawn Michael with Family Solutions 3. And again, her contact information is there. Call her if you know someone, you know, a
Yes.
child or a youth or a family that's suffering. Direct other people to Dawn and give them her contact
Yes.
information. And so thank you for being with us in this segment. Stay tuned for the second half of our program.
Thank you.